This one is from, here it is, Kulinlin, I think. I don't know. It's from somebody.
Okay.
And they say, I'm struggling to remember Russian vocab and grammar. What should I do? And then the actual question here is, what is the best way of learning a language? I am currently struggling to remember Russian and vocab structures. What can I do to make that easier?
Sure. So there's effectively two different ideas behind this, and in our system, we merge them together. So there is the study portion where you are spending time to study grammar or vocabulary, flashcards, Anki, etc.
Learning about the language.
Learning about the language. And that's what we would call preparation. So you're preparing yourself for immersion. And in doing that studying, you are giving yourself tools and resources and thought processes so that when you jump into immersion, you actually recognize those things. What we have seen with a lot of clients and with a lot of learners is that most people spend way too much time doing their preparation, just drilling flashcards because they think they're not ready for immersion. But
it feels safe. It feels like you're doing more.
Yeah, like you're getting more out of it. Right. But what we've noticed is we hear this story all the time, and I'm sure if you've been learning a language for a while, you've experienced this. There will be something that you just cannot wrap your head around, like a word you just cannot remember, and you're just failing it constantly in Anki, and it's just leaching over and over again. But then you go into your immersion and you hear that word in a different context, and suddenly you come back to Anki and you never fail that word ever again, because now you have a different context that you've seen it, and that additional context reinforces your memory. And that reinforcement gives you additional information, allows you to retrieve that information more easily. And so when we look at how do you remember vocabulary more easily, you want to be doing both of these things together. You want to be studying your words, and you also want to be seeing them in different contexts so that it reinforces the memory. And the two of those things together is what's actually going to propel your memory forward and what is going to solidify your vocabulary. There's another level to this, though, which is you can do other activities to reinforce vocabulary, reinforce grammar. We generally don't recommend output early on in the process, but there's definitely anecdotal experience of close cards where you have to remember the word, go the opposite direction, so rather than recognition, and that can also reinforce the memory. We would not recommend only doing that, but there definitely seems to be a memory boost if you are forced to actually recall that word from your working memory. So, switching your cards direction can also assist with that. That being said, people tend to go way overboard on that and do that with every single card. And that tends to be kind of a waste of time because you get a lot of it for free just from immersion. But you can do closed cards to help you to remember, but if you find yourself struggling with that too, it's probably an issue of what's called contextually dependent memory, where you need to see the information in many different contexts in order to remember it more effectively. When you say you're struggling to remember grammar, that indicates to me that you might be doing some output and you're trying to use grammar. And that is something that we don't recommend until much later on in the process. If you are in your immersion, you're like, that grammar structure, I don't remember what it is. That's something that doesn't really resonate with my experience, just because the grammar structures are so regular most of the time that once you identify what it is very easy to understand.
Or for me, I don't even need to know what the grammar structure is because it's clear in context. It's like, this person is clearly asking this person for this thing.
Right.
There's not really another way to interpret it since there's a lot of context.
Yep.
That's something that that's my experience of it as well.
Yeah. So remembering grammar is something that shouldn't really be a problem if you're immersing. It's only a problem if you're trying to use the language.
Yeah.
And in my experience, remembering grammar when you're trying to use the language at a very early level, or at least part of the process, is very difficult. Keeping all those rules is very hard. Impossible to do 100% correctly, but you can get pretty far with it if you're just focused on casual conversation. Later on, remembering grammar is just not really an issue. You just kind of navigate it instinctually. You make mistakes. I still make mistakes sometimes, but I can usually like look at it and be like, I made a mistake.
English all the time.
True. But I don't like remember grammar rules per se, with the exception of things like even in English, I'll have some grammar rules like, oh, am I using me or I in this sentence? Because I make that mistake all the time, and like having a rule just helps me correct it. So there are things that
you and I
useful
both
later on. Yeah, you and me both. So, for example, in Spanish, subjunctive triggers are a useful thing to study, just because it's an easy way to be like, oh, do I use subjunctive here? Oh, right, it's this, done. And because you have the foundation of the language, it's pretty easy to remember those things. So I would probably need to learn a little bit more about exactly what you're struggling with in order to diagnose more effectively. One thing that I will say is we do talk about this in the course, in the Teach Yourself a Language course, and we do have a support community, so you can ask us questions, and we are happy to deep dive into these problems with you. So if that's something that's interesting to you, if this is something that you are struggling with, definitely check that out. And I think, we talk about this specific problem in day 5, and then the grammar stuff much later in the course on day 25, I think.
I think it's a little later, but I think we changed it to 26, but whatever.
Sure, whatever.
It's also worth mentioning that a lot of these questions, if for somebody that is less able to just like hear the answer and then go, okay, I can now implement this. The course covers a lot of these things and helps you put them into your routine that day. Right? We made the course 30 days long for a reason, so that you have time to build up your own process and your habits and your routine and really get good at the entire process of language learning. I think that's something really cool that we focus on that a lot of courses don't. They often focus on the language itself, on how to more effectively learn Spanish grammar, Spanish vocab, whatever, rather than how do you actually stick with this for the long term? How do you examine your own process, like we mentioned earlier? How do you continuously improve what you're doing so that you never stagnate and that sort of thing? And so if you're struggling to implement things or don't really want to think about doing it yourself, got rid of the question, then the course is a really good option for that, because it helps you to break things down, go day by day, and have access to anything, or have access to us to ask any questions that are a little bit confusing. I know that Ethan happens to be kind of addicted to checking the Discord server. Like, there'll be a question, and within a couple of minutes, he's on the airplane and he sends a response. I'm like, I didn't think you had internet. And he's like, I don't know, I have a problem.
Yeah, I definitely am addicted to answering people's questions. So.
Hey, as you know, there's a lot of language learning advice out there, which can make it kind of overwhelming and difficult to actually get going on your own learning. If you feel like you're struggling to figure out language learning, you're not alone. It's an extremely complicated process with tons of different steps. If you're looking for a step-by-step guide to create the perfect language learning routine for you, then you have to check out our new course. We spent thousands of hours designing a simple and straightforward process that you can use to create your own personalized language routine that actually works. We understand that every learner is different and that you have to roll with the punches and adapt. Every day for 30 days, I walk you through everything you need to know to build an effective learning routine, no matter your circumstances. We give you the advice and resources you need to ensure your success, so you don't have to waste time looking for stuff to do and can focus on learning. And if any questions do come up, don't worry. We are always there to answer any questions and clear up confusion. And it's all backed by our 90-day, no questions asked, money-back guarantee. If, for whatever reason, something's not quite working for you, we insist you get every penny back. It's time for you to stop wishing that you could learn a second language. It's time to become the master of your language learning journey. Check out the link below to get instant access and start your journey today.